Welcome back to Space for Sonder. If you're tuning in for the very first time, welcome. And if you're returning, I'm so glad to have you here once again. For those of you that don't know, this podcast is a space designed with softness in mind. A place where we can talk about mental health honestly, ethically, and compassionately, but also with depth, with clarity, and with the emotional clarity it deserves. My name is Kira, and I will be your host. Space for Sonder is shaped by my own experiences with mental health and a deep desire to offer something meaningful to anyone who might need it. You're not here by accident. You're here because something in the world has felt heavy, confusing, overwhelming, or misunderstood. And I hope this space can be a quiet companion in that. Before we begin today's conversation, let me briefly explain how the structure of this podcast works, for those of us who may be new. The episodes titled Let's Talk About are the longer discussion-based episodes where we explore a specific area of mental health in depth, academically, psychologically, and reflectively. The same way we did in episode 1 when we talked about depression. If you haven't yet listened to episode 1, I recommend giving that a listen as well. The episodes titled Listen When are the shorter, guided moments you can return to when you need grounding, support, company, or a voice walking beside you through what you're feeling. They're practical, nurturing, and personal. Both are important, both have purpose, and both were created with you in mind. Today's focus is anxiety, specifically the kind that manifests itself in spirals of what if, the quiet fear, the anticipatory dread, the needless rehearsing of disaster, the exhaustion of living mentally in the future, even when your body remains here. But before we go any further, I'd like to place a gentle content note. In this episode, we're going to talk about anxiety, including symptoms, panic responses, cognitive spirals, and the emotional experience of living with chronic fear. Nothing graphic, but some descriptions may feel sensitive or familiar. If you need to pause at any point, please do. You are always welcome to return whenever you feel ready. And with that being said, let's begin. Anxiety is a word we use casually. I'm anxious about this meeting. I'm anxious about today. But in psychology, anxiety is not simply worry. It's a complex interaction between neurobiology, cognition, emotion, and behavior. A whole body response shaped by your nervous system and past experiences. Research by neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux shows that anxiety begins in the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for detecting threat. It reacts before we are consciously aware of what we are reacting to. This means your body can enter alert mode, even when your mind hasn't yet identified a cause. The prefrontal cortex, the reasoning center, is supposed to regulate this alarm, but under chronic stress or repeated fear, it becomes less effective. This is why anxiety can feel irrational, even when it's overwhelming. Your brain isn't failing you, it's trying to protect you, just with outdated information. When the amygdala activates, your sympathetic nervous system surges, resulting in an increased heartbeat, shallow breathing, muscle tension, some feelings of dizziness and nausea, hot or cold waves, tunnel vision, and restlessness. These are not signs of weakness, they are survival mechanisms. Psychologist David Clark describes anxiety as the misinterpretation of bodily sensations, meaning when the body whispers, anxiety shouts. The psychological component of anxiety is what makes it so exhausting. According to Aaron Beck, anxiety relies on cognitive distortions, such as catastrophizing, which is thinking something terrible will happen, fortune telling, thinking you already know how something will end, mind reading, which is trying to imagine what other people think about you, and emotional reasoning, which is where you have the feeling of being scared, so you therefore think you must be in danger. These distortions feed the what-if cycle. Therapists like Dr. Claire Weeks explained that anxiety often stems from learned fear responses. The nervous system remembers previous threats, and begins responding to similar situations automatically. This is why anxiety seems to appear without reasoning. It is responding to patterns, not moments. Let's step away from the science for a moment and talk about what anxiety actually feels like in your body, in your thoughts, in the quiet moments no one sees. Maybe for you, it begins with a flutter in your chest, a tightening in your stomach, a thought that expands too quickly. Maybe it's waking up with your heart already racing. Maybe it's overthinking a text before you send it, or replaying a conversation you had 6 hours ago because you're convinced you said the wrong thing. Maybe anxiety makes you cancel plans, or say, "I'm just tired," when really you're overwhelmed. Or maybe you've become so good at appearing fine that people have no idea what it costs you to function. Whatever your version looks like, it is real, it is valid, and it is worthy of understanding. Anxiety also shows up in ways that are harder to explain. It shows up when you're scrolling through your phone, not taking in anything you're seeing, because your brain is already 10 steps ahead of you. Imagining consequences, rehearsing outcomes, scanning for danger that isn't even there. It shows up when you feel like you're on edge, but you can't articulate why, because the reason isn't logical, it's biological. Your nervous system is responding to possibility, not reality. It shows up when someone says, "Just calm down," and you want to scream. Because if calming down were possible in that moment, you would have done it. When anxiety rises, it often takes the shape of hyper-awareness, a state where the brain, driven by the amygdala's threat response system, becomes intensely attuned to sensations, cues, and tiny shifts in the environment. You might suddenly become acutely aware of your own heartbeat, not because it has changed, but because your brain has shifted into surveillance mode. You may begin monitoring your breathing, convinced it feels too shallow or too fast, simply because your attention has narrowed inward. Even something as ordinary as swallowing can feel amplified, almost embarrassingly loud, as though your body has become a microphone picking up every detail. This hypervigilance extends beyond the physical. You may start analysing the way you're coming across in a conversation, replaying your tone, questioning your facial expressions, wondering if you've talked too much, too little, or simply gotten it wrong. Silence can suddenly feel like evidence that you've upset someone. A small shift in someone's expression becomes something to decode, a puzzle your brain feels responsible for solving. You begin scanning for meaning in everything, interpreting harmless moments as signals of danger or rejection. And over all of this sits the constant fear of how you're being perceived, as though the world is watching you through a magnifying glass. What's important, and why I've chosen to include this, is that this experience is not dramatic, it's not overreaction, it's not being too sensitive. In fact, these patterns are well documented across psychological and neuroscientific research. Hyper-awareness is a hallmark of an overactivated threat system. It reflects a brain that has learned, often through past overwhelm or trauma, to stay alert in order to feel safe. In cognitive behavioral therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy, clinicians describe this as an attentional bias toward perceived threat, a survival instinct that has simply become too loud, too constant, too exhausting. I want listeners to hear this and feel understood, not judged. Because when we don't understand what's happening inside of us, we tend to assume it is a personal flaw. But what you are experiencing is your nervous system trying, albeit clumsily, to protect you. Nothing about this is a weakness. Nothing about this is just in your head. It is a real physiological shift, and naming it helps us reclaim power from it. Psychologist Stephen Porges would call it neuroception. Your nervous system automatically scanning for danger, even without conscious thought. Your body learned at some point in your life that safety is uncertain, and so it looks for danger constantly. Sometimes anxiety looks like restlessness, needing to move, fidget, stand up, pace, and other times it looks like shutting down. The freeze response, feeling disconnected, numb, unable to speak, as if your brain has gone offline. Sometimes it looks like perfectionism, trying so desperately to control things externally because your internal world feels unpredictable. It can look like irritability, snapping at someone you love because your nervous system is overloaded, and sometimes it looks like silence, appearing composed, even confident, while internally you're fighting a private battle. Anxiety is not one size fits all. It wears different faces in different people, and even different faces within the same person on different days. But whatever form it takes in you, you are not alone in it. You are not the only one who feels overwhelmed by small things. You are not the only one who can't explain why your body feels like it's in danger. You are not the only one who fears the what-ifs more than the present moment. And you are not the only one pretending to be fine every day. The what-if cycle is one of the most defining features of anxiety. What if something bad happens? What if I embarrass myself? What if I fail? What if everything goes wrong? Psychologists Borkovic and Inns described worry as a cognitive attempt to avoid emotional processing. This means that the mind creates worries not to torment you, but to prepare you. Worry is the brain's attempt to prevent surprise. But here's the problem. Worry predicts danger. Your body reacts as if the danger is real, and your mind interprets your body's reaction as proof that the danger must exist. This creates the anxiety loop. A thought appears, what if something goes wrong? The body reacts as if danger is present. The mind interprets the bodily sensations as confirmation, then the cycle repeats. This loop is grounded not in imagination, but in cognitive distortions. Psychologist Aaron Beck, often considered the father of cognitive therapy, described several characteristic thinking patterns that help to maintain and intensify anxiety. These aren't deliberate choices or dramatic overreactions. They are automatic cognitive processes, shaped by a nervous system trying to anticipate danger. Understanding them can help listeners recognize their own patterns with more compassion and less self-criticism. One of the most common patterns is catastrophizing, where the mind leaps instinctively to the worst-case scenario. It's not simply worrying, it's the brain performing rapid threat assessment, imagining outcomes far more extreme than the situation warrants. For example, a student who gets one lower grade might suddenly imagine their entire academic future collapsing, or someone running late may start believing their job is in danger. The mind says, if I make a mistake, it will be a disaster. And although this feels irrational in hindsight, in the moment it feels like preparation, as though rehearsing disaster might protect you from it. Another pattern described by Beck is fortune telling, where the anxious mind predicts failure or danger as though it is an inevitability. This often appears as a quiet certainty. This will go wrong, I know it. What makes this distortion particularly powerful is that the prediction feels factual. Anxiety tricks the brain into confusing possibility with certainty. Research in clinical psychology shows that individuals with anxiety disorders consistently overestimate the likelihood of negative events, even when there is no evidence to support the prediction. Emotional reasoning is another subtle but influential distortion. This is when feelings are treated as reliable evidence. I feel scared, so something must be wrong. In other words, the emotion becomes the proof. The nervous system generates a physical fear response, and the mind interprets that response as confirmation of danger. It is a deeply human error, because emotional intensity feels true, even when it's not accurate. Therapists often help clients separate internal sensations from external reality, but when anxiety is active, the body can be so loud that the distinction feels impossible. Beck also identified mind reading, a pattern where individuals assume they know what others are thinking. The anxious mind becomes hyper-attuned to social cues, a raised eyebrow, a pause in conversation, a neutral comment, and interprets these as negative judgments. They think I'm weird, I ruined everything. Social psychologist David Clarke's cognitive model of social anxiety supports this, explaining that heightened self-consciousness makes people misinterpret neutral or ambiguous cues as personal failure. The fear isn't just about what others think, it's about the imagined certainty of rejection. Finally, there is black and white thinking, sometimes called dichotomous thinking. This is when situations are viewed in extremes, with no room for nuance. If I'm not perfect, I'm a failure. Anxiety struggles with grey areas. It seeks clarity, certainty, and safety. And when life feels uncertain, the mind resorts to absolutes because they feel simpler and more controllable. But these absolutes create enormous internal pressure. When perfection becomes the only acceptable outcome, even small setbacks feel catastrophic. Each of these patterns is supported by decades of psychological research, and all of them share one core truth. They are coping mechanisms that have become overactive, not personality flaws. They arise from a brain trying to predict danger, control outcomes, and protect you, even if the methods it uses end up causing more distress. Recognizing these distortions doesn't eliminate anxiety, but it can soften its grip. It allows listeners to notice, name, and gently challenge the narratives playing out in their mind, turning automatic fear into something understood, manageable, and far less isolating. These distortions are deeply human. They are the brain's shortcuts, trying to protect us by simplifying the world into predictable patterns, but they often leave us exhausted. Evolutionary psychology offers another important perspective. Historically, humans survived by anticipating danger. The most anxious individuals, the ones who were hyper-alert, cautious, constantly scanning, were more likely to survive in threatening environments. This means the tendency to predict danger is written into us. In modern life, where threats are often emotional or social rather than physical, this survival mechanism becomes problematic. Your brain is doing its job, just in the wrong context. When you catastrophize the future, your brain believes it's helping. When you overthink every social interaction, your brain believes it's protecting you from rejection. When you fear loss before it happens, your brain believes it's preparing you for the impact. Anxiety is not a malfunction. It is an outdated adaptation. This understanding doesn't make anxiety disappear, but it often makes people feel less ashamed of it. Your brain evolved to keep you alive, not comfortable. One of the most misunderstood aspects of anxiety is avoidance. Avoidance is not laziness, avoidance is not weakness, avoidance is not a lack of willpower. Avoidance is a nervous system response. According to Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory, the body's response to threat is far more complex than the simple fight or flight model most of us were taught. Porges' work shows that the nervous system is constantly scanning the environment, a process he calls neuroception, searching for cues of safety or danger long before we consciously register them. When the body perceives a threat, whether real or imagined, it shifts into one of several physiological states designed to protect us. These states often appear subtly in daily behaviour, so subtly that people living with anxiety may not even realise they are cycling through them. The first state is the fight response, which doesn't always look like physical aggression. In the context of anxiety, it often shows up as irritability, frustration, emotional defensiveness, or a short fuse. It's that internal pressure that makes you snap at someone you love, or become tense when something doesn't go to plan. From the outside, it may seem like anger. Internally, it is the nervous system preparing the body to regain control. The flight response is equally common and often misunderstood. Rather than literal running, it can take the shape of restlessness, pacing, overworking, constantly keeping yourself busy, or avoiding tasks and conversations that feel overwhelming. It's that subtle urge to escape from a room, a situation, or even your own thoughts. For many individuals, this becomes a lifestyle of perpetual motion, staying busy enough to outrun discomfort. Then there is the freeze response, which is deeply tied to feelings of overwhelm. This state often manifests as a mental fog, emotional numbness, paralysis in decision making, dissociation, or that sense of shutting down completely. Many people describe it as being stuck, feeling frozen, or not being able to move forward. It's not laziness, apathy, or lack of effort. It is the nervous system choosing stillness as its safest option when action feels too threatening. The fourth response, one that is finally becoming more widely recognised, is fawning. This is the instinct to appease, to please, and to dissolve oneself into what others need or want in order to stay safe. It may appear as over-apologising, chronic people-pleasing, saying yes when you desperately want to say no, or suppressing your own needs to prevent conflict. For many living with anxiety, this response becomes so ingrained that they mistake it for their personality, when in reality, it is a survival pattern the body learned long before they understood it. What's vital to understand is that many people with anxiety cycle through these stages not occasionally, but daily, sometimes shifting between them multiple times within a single hour. And none of these responses are choices. They are not weaknesses. They are not character flaws. They are physiological states guided by an autonomic nervous system working tirelessly to keep you safe. When we label ourselves as dramatic, too sensitive, lazy, overreactive, or difficult, we're often misinterpreting what is simply a frightened nervous system trying its best. Your body is not malfunctioning. It is protecting you from discomfort, embarrassment, unpredictability, rejection, or whatever your system has learned to interpret as danger. This is also why avoidance feels so comforting in the moment. When you avoid a situation that triggers anxiety, the body experiences an immediate drop in threat signals, which the brain interprets as relief, but that relief is temporary because the underlying fear remains unchallenged. As many psychologists know, including Porges and later clinical researchers, avoidance reduces anxiety in the short term, but reinforces it in the long term. Not because you've failed, not because you're weak, but because your nervous system has learned that avoidance equals safety. And this is why self-compassion is essential in healing anxiety. You cannot shame yourself out of a fear response. You cannot bully your nervous system into calm. The only way forward is through gentleness, understanding, and slowly teaching the body what safety feels like again. With time, consistency, and support, the nervous system can be retrained, not through force, but through compassion. Another experience that deserves careful attention is high-functioning anxiety, a form that often goes unnoticed in educational settings, professional environments, and even within friendships and families. High-functioning anxiety can be difficult to identify because it rarely matches the stereotypical image of anxiety that people expect. Instead of visible panic or withdrawal, it often presents through behaviours that society praises: productivity, competence, and composure. On the surface, individuals with high-functioning anxiety can appear exceptionally organised, capable, calm, reliable, and socially confident. They are often the ones who arrive early, meet deadlines, contribute actively, and hold everything together. To the outside world, they seem put together, even thriving. But beneath that polished exterior lies an internal world shaped by perfectionism, fear of failure, and constant self-monitoring. The calm others admire is often the result of meticulous preparation driven by worry. The reliability is maintained through an inner narrative that panics at the thought of disappointing anyone. The success is frequently fueled by chronic self-doubt and the belief that slowing down will invite criticism or reveal inadequacy. Psychologist Dr. Ellen Hendrickson, who has written extensively on this phenomenon, describes high-functioning anxiety as thriving on the surface but driven by inner turmoil. This is not simply poetic language. It reflects what many individuals experience daily, an internal pressure that never turns off. Even when achievements are met, the relief is fleeting. Instead of satisfaction, the nervous system moves immediately to the next task, the next expectation, the next possibility of getting something wrong. People with high-functioning anxiety often struggle profoundly with setting boundaries. Saying no can feel dangerous, as though it risks disappointing others or damaging their image. Rest is also difficult, because the moment they stop being productive, guilt arrives quickly and loudly. Internally, they may experience intrusive thoughts, cycles of overthinking, or the constant fear that they are not doing enough. Even when external evidence shows that they are exceeding expectations, these patterns align with cognitive theories of anxiety, which suggest that individuals overestimate the importance of mistakes and underestimate their own capability. What makes high-functioning anxiety particularly challenging is how it is perceived by others. Instead of receiving support, these individuals are often praised for their discipline, efficiency, and determination. Teachers, colleagues, and managers may rely more heavily on them because they seem so capable. Friends and family may believe they are coping well because they appear sociable and composed. The internal distress goes unnoticed because the external performance looks strong. This mismatch between external appearance and internal experience can create a profound sense of loneliness, the feeling of being overwhelmed while simultaneously expected to hold everything together. If any of this resonates with you, it's important to know this. Your struggles are valid even if they are invisible to others. The absence of visible symptoms does not diminish the intensity of your inner experience. Anxiety does not need to look chaotic to be real. You deserve the same support, compassion, and understanding as someone whose anxiety manifests more openly. High-functioning anxiety is not a compliment. It is a sign that someone is working extremely hard beneath the surface, often without recognition, rest, or relief. And you deserve all three. Another form of anxiety that deserves careful attention, and one I personally struggled with for a vast portion of my life, is social anxiety. Social anxiety is often misunderstood as simple shyness, but the two are not the same. Shyness is a temperament. Social anxiety is a condition rooted in the nervous system and maintained by deeply ingrained patterns of thought. At its core, social anxiety is the fear of negative evaluation, the belief that others are watching, judging, or assessing you harshly. This isn't vanity or self-obsession, it is the brain's threat system going into overdrive in social situations. People with social anxiety don't just fear social interactions, they fear the perceived consequences of them. Internally, the amygdala becomes highly reactive, sending signals to the body that something is dangerous, even when the situation is harmless. This can cause physical symptoms such as sweating, trembling, nausea, or a racing heart when meeting new people or speaking in unfamiliar groups. But the fear goes much deeper. It can make eye contact feel overwhelming, not because the person doesn't want to engage, but because eye contact can feel like exposure, as though someone could see every insecurity simply by looking. Conversations may become mental obstacle courses. There may be an intense worry about saying the wrong thing or coming across as strange, boring, too quiet, too loud, or simply not enough. Even after interactions end, social anxiety lingers. Many people replay conversations in their mind, evaluating every sentence, analysing tone, and imagining how the other person may have interpreted it. This pattern, known as post-event processing, is a well-documented mechanism in Clark and Wells' social anxiety model, where individuals scrutinise their behaviour long after the social moment has passed. The impact extends into daily life. Social gatherings may be avoided, not because the person dislikes others, but because the internal pressure feels unbearable. Eating, speaking, or working in front of others can trigger intense self-consciousness, as though every moment is being observed. In the Social Anxiety Workbook, psychologists Gillian Butler and Ellen Lee describe social anxiety as living under the belief that you are constantly being evaluated. For those who struggle with it, this description is painfully accurate. The fear is not of people themselves, but of the imagined scrutiny, the possibility of embarrassment, rejection, or judgment. Yet, the reality of social interactions is often far gentler than anxiety allows us to believe. In truth, people think far less about us than our anxious minds imagine. Silence in conversation is natural. It isn't a sign of failure or awkwardness. Small missteps, stumbling over a word, forgetting a name, losing your train of thought, are human moments we all experience, and others rarely remember them for more than a few seconds. Most people are far more focused on their own inner world than evaluating ours, and more often than not, our presence is welcomed and appreciated far more than we realise. But anxiety is persuasive. It convinces us that these truths don't apply to us, that we are the exception, that every social moment carries enormous risk. When social anxiety takes hold, the imagined consequences feel so vivid and believable that reassurance alone cannot erase them. The experience becomes a mix of physical fear, emotional vulnerability, and cognitive distortion, a combination that can make everyday interactions feel like monumental tasks. Understanding social anxiety through this compassionate, evidence-based lens helps us recognise that what we struggle with is not a personal weakness or a social failing. It's a nervous system responding to perceived danger, doing everything it can to keep us safe, even when its methods are misguided. And the more we understand this, the easier it becomes to soften the self-criticism that often accompanies social anxiety, creating room for patience, healing, and self-acceptance. Panic is one of the most overwhelming and frightening expressions of anxiety. It's not simply being dramatic or overreacting as some people mistakenly assume. A panic attack is a full-body event, an intense surge of physiological activation that convinces the mind that something catastrophic is happening. For many people, the experience is so vivid and alarming that it can mimic the symptoms of a heart attack. The chest tightens, breath becomes shallow, and the heartbeat pounds so forcefully that it feels impossible to ignore. Some people describe it as suffocation, as though the air has become thick or inaccessible, even though oxygen levels remain normal. Alongside these physical sensations, many individuals experience dizziness or a sense of derealization, an unsettling feeling that the world around them has become distant, dreamlike, or unreal. Others feel an intense wave of heat moving through the body, trembling in the hands or legs, or a sudden disorientation that makes it hard to think clearly. These symptoms can feel terrifying because they arise rapidly and without warning, and because they're accompanied by the deep, instinctive fear that something is terribly wrong. Psychologist David Clarke, whose cognitive model of panic has shaped decades of clinical treatment, explains that panic often begins with a harmless bodily sensation. Perhaps it's a flutter in the chest, a slight shortness of breath after climbing the stairs, a sudden warmth, or a moment of lightheadedness. For individuals without anxiety, these sensations can pass unnoticed. But for someone prone to panic, the mind interprets the sensation as a sign of danger. I'm going to faint. I'm losing control. I can't breathe, or this is a heart attack. Once the mind labels the sensation as dangerous, the body responds accordingly. The sympathetic nervous system releases adrenaline, preparing for fight or flight. This causes the heart to beat faster, breathing to become quicker, and the muscles to tense. These new sensations then reinforce the belief that something catastrophic is unfolding. The individual becomes caught in a loop where the fear of the sensation creates more sensation, which in turn creates more fear. It is important to emphasize that none of this is a failure of strength or willpower. It is a miscommunication between body and mind, where the brain's threat system is activated by something that is not actually a threat. In many ways, the body behaves like a smoke alarm that is overly sensitive. It sounds the alarm even when the toast is burning, not the house. Anxiety is the body trying to protect you in the wrong moments, at the wrong volume, and with the wrong interpretation of what's happening. Understanding this physiology can be incredibly empowering. Once you realize that your body is not shutting down, but overreacting, the sensations become slightly less mysterious and slightly less terrifying. This shift in understanding is at the heart of many evidence-based treatments for panic, such as cognitive behavioural therapy and interoceptive exposure. When we learn to reinterpret bodily sensations as harmless, we slowly retrain the nervous system to respond with less intensity. Panic is treatable. The cycle can be interrupted. With time and the right strategies, the body can be taught that these sensations are uncomfortable, but not dangerous. You can learn to soothe the alarm instead of fighting it, to ride the wave instead of fearing its arrival. Most importantly, panic does not define you. It is an experience you have, not a reflection of your character. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are a human being with a sensitive nervous system, one that can heal, adapt, and find safety again. Anxiety is shaped not only by our biology and psychology, but also by the society we exist within. The world around us teaches us what to fear, what to value, what to hide, and what to carry in silence. In many ways, we live in a culture that rewards the very behaviours that exasperate anxiety, creating an environment where struggling becomes invisible and silence becomes the norm. We are surrounded by a social narrative that places productivity above rest, suggesting that our worth is tied to how much we achieve rather than how we feel. This pressure encourages constant overextension, the sense that slowing down is equivalent to falling behind. At the same time, there is a cultural prioritization of performance over authenticity, pushing people to present a curated, polished version of themselves that is often misaligned with their inner emotional reality. When society praises perfection and punishes imperfection, anxiety thrives in the gap between who we are and who we think we are supposed to be. This environment leaves very little room for the messy, human experiences that make us who we are. We are conditioned to seek certainty rather than curiosity, to appear strong rather than vulnerable, and to manage our emotions privately rather than risk burdening others. When these messages are internalized, anxiety becomes a quiet companion, something carried internally while the external persona remains composed. People whisper about their panic attacks, if they mention them at all. They mask their spiraling thoughts with humor, retreat into silence when overwhelmed, and apologize for their emotions, even when those emotions are entirely valid. Sociologist Thomas Sheff describes this cultural phenomenon as pathologized emotion. He argued that modern society often teaches individuals to view their natural emotional responses as flaws, weaknesses, or signs of instability. Often teaches individuals to view their natural emotional responses as flaws, weaknesses, or signs of instability. Instead of understanding emotions as signals, as the body's way of communicating needs or boundaries, people come to interpret them as failures. This leads to self-punishment, minimizing one's own suffering, comparing one's pain to others, and dismissing internal distress as being too sensitive or dramatic. But the truth is far gentler, far more human. Your feelings are valid because they are real. Your fear is understandable because it has context. Anxiety is not a weakness. It is a response to a world that often demands more than a nervous system can bear. Expectations pile too high, and authenticity becomes hidden beneath layers of performance. The anxious mind is not malfunctioning, it is overwhelmed. It is reacting to an environment that frequently asks too much and slows down too little. Anxiety becomes easier to understand when we recognize that much of what we struggle with is shaped by the world around us. You are not failing for feeling anxious. You are responding to pressures that human beings were never built to withstand alone. And acknowledging this is not self-pity. It is self-awareness. It is the first step towards compassion, connection, and healing. Psychologist Kristin Neff, whose pioneering research on self-compassion has reshaped modern therapeutic practice, argues that people heal more effectively when they treat themselves with the same warmth and understanding they naturally extend to others. Her work highlights a powerful truth. The tone we use with ourselves during moments of anxiety is often far harsher than anything we would say to someone we love. This discrepancy is not a reflection of strength. It's a reflection of habit, conditioning, and a culture that equates self-criticism with motivation. Neff encourages us to imagine how we would speak to a close friend if they were experiencing the same fear, panic, or overwhelm that we feel inside. Most of us wouldn't dream of telling a friend to get over it, or accuse them of being dramatic, irrational, or difficult. We wouldn't minimize their experience or dismiss the intensity of their fear. Instead, we would acknowledge their pain. We would remind them that what they are feeling is real, valid, and understandable. We might say, "I know this feels overwhelming," or "You're allowed to be scared," or simply, "You're not alone, I'm here." It's interesting because we instinctively know how to comfort others. Yet for many people living with anxiety, extending this same compassion inward feels almost impossible. Instead of comfort, the inner voice becomes sharp, impatient, or shame-filled. Instead of reassurance, it offers blame. This is not because you lack kindness. It's because anxiety activates the threat system, and the brain mistakenly believes that self-criticism will keep you safe by pushing you to do better, be stronger, or stop feeling this way. In reality, the opposite is true. Self-criticism intensifies the nervous system's alarm, deepening the cycle of fear. Neff's work teaches that self-compassion is not indulgence, it is regulation. When anxiety rises, your body experiences a surge of physiological activation. A racing heart, tight chest, trembling muscles, intrusive thoughts, and what the nervous system needs most in that moment is reassurance. Not logic, not dismissal, not perfection, reassurance. Compassion activates the parasympathetic nervous system, helping the body return to a state of safety. In other words, being kind to yourself is not weakness, it is biology. This is why reframing the internal dialogue is so powerful. When you begin speaking to yourself the way you would speak to someone you adore, gently, patiently, without judgment, you create space for healing. You remind your nervous system that the threat has passed. You remind your mind that you do not have to fight yourself to survive. Anxiety does not respond to shame. It does not soften under criticism. It does not quieten when silenced. It responds to understanding, to context, to space, to compassion. You deserve the same tenderness you so willingly offer to others. You deserve to be spoken to with care, especially in the moments when you feel undeserving of it. Anxiety is not something you conquer through self-punishment. It is something you soothe through self-kindness. When you allow yourself that compassion, you begin the gentle process of teaching your body that it is safe, and you begin healing not just the anxiety, but the relationship you have with yourself. Understanding anxiety on an academic level is empowering. It gives us language, structure, and context for what so often feels chaotic. But living with anxiety requires more than knowledge. It requires tools, practical strategies that help us navigate the experience in real time. These techniques are rooted in established therapeutic frameworks, including Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory, Aaron Beck and David Clarke's work in cognitive behavioral therapy, Bessel van der Kolk's contributions to somatic therapy, the principles of acceptance and commitment therapy developed by Hayes, Stroessel, and Wilson, and the compassionate foundations introduced by Paul Gilbert in compassion-focused therapy. What follows is a series of grounding and regulation practices informed by this research, but delivered gently, because healing must be both evidence-based and kind. One of the most effective tools for calming the nervous system is regulated breathing. Contrary to popular belief, taking very deep breaths can sometimes make anxiety worse by increasing dizziness or encouraging hyperventilation. Instead, therapists emphasize controlled, intentional breathing patterns that communicate safety to the body. One example is extended exhale breathing, where you inhale softly for 4 seconds and exhale for 6 to 8. The longer exhale activates the vagus nerve, signaling to the body that the threat has passed. Another approach is box breathing, a technique often used in trauma therapy and resilience training. You inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold again for 4. A rhythmic cycle that steadies the mind and gently regulates physiological arousal. These methods remind the body that it does not need to stay in survival mode. Another powerful tool comes from CBT and mindfulness-based therapies. Naming what is real in the moment. Anxiety often pulls us into the imagined future, into what-ifs, spirals and scenarios that may never occur. Grounding yourself through simple internal statements such as, "I am noticing anxiety," or "This is a feeling, not a fact," can create distance between you and the fear. Reminding yourself that my body is reacting, but I am not in danger. Or, this sensation will pass, helps shift the mind out of catastrophe and back into the present. This isn't about dismissing the emotion, it's about giving it context, which reduces its intensity. Sensory grounding is another gentle yet effective practice. The well-known 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method invites you to consciously observe your environment. 5 things you can see. 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 you can taste. This exercise interrupts the brain's alarm response by engaging the sensory system, pulling attention outward instead of inward. Research shows that this kind of sensory orientation can reduce cognitive load during periods of high anxiety and help re-establish a sense of safety. There is also a surprising but scientifically supported tool, temperature change. According to polyvagal research, cold stimulation activates the mammalian dive reflex, slowing the heart rate and calming the nervous system. Splashing cold water on your face, running cool water over your wrists, briefly stepping outside into fresh air, or holding something cold can interrupt the physiological cascade of panic. This technique works quickly because it engages autonomic reflexes rather than relying solely on conscious thought. Movement is another underrated but powerful form of regulation. Anxiety is an activation, a surge of energy that the body prepares to use. When that energy has nowhere to go, it contributes to feelings of restlessness, tension, and agitation. Gentle movement, such as pacing, stretching, shaking out the hands, rolling the shoulders, or taking a short walk, can help disperse adrenaline. Somatic therapist Bessel van der Klok highlights how movement supports the completion of the stress response cycle, preventing the body from staying stuck in activation. For the cognitive side of anxiety, especially the spirals of what-if thinking, cognitive reframing can be transformative. Instead of battling anxious thoughts, which often intensifies them, reframing invites you to shift perspective. If the mind says, "What if everything goes wrong?" you can gently counter with, "What if it goes okay?" Or, "What if the outcome is neutral?" Or even, "What if I can cope even if it's imperfect?" This mirrors a key principle of ACT therapy, moving from control and certainty toward curiosity and acceptance. If anything in today's episode felt heavy or resonated deeply, please remember there is support available. Call Samaritans UK on 116 123 or call Anxiety UK at 03 444 775 774. You can visit Mind UK on their website for mental health information and support, or you can text SHOUT in all caps, that's SHOUT, to 85258. Or you can access NHS mental health services via your GP or their website. If you are in immediate danger, please call 999. You deserve care, safety, and someone to talk to. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for listening so openly and for allowing me to sit with you, even just for a moment, inside the landscape of your mind. Your trust means more than you know. This has been Space for Sonder, and this was episode 2. Let's talk about anxiety and the fear of what ifs.